accidentally gotten their hands on a gun and shot themselves or somebody else. And that also brings all the trauma that Dr. Murphy is explaining. And it doesn't have to be that way. We know that there are measures that we can take that can have a huge impact, bringing the rate of those incidents down. So that's part of the reason why we're doing this work. But so my next question, I'm going to ask of Representative Roberts. Can you just tell us about some of the legislation that you have sponsored at the legislature? And I have a follow-up question, it's 2 parts. If you can then share with us just maybe what you think is possible in Georgia, and where we are with some of the other pieces with your legislation, and then other pieces as well.
Absolutely. Well, since I've been in the legislature, I've co-sponsored many bills, including universal background checks, which to me just seems like the easiest one that we could do. I've been there when we've passed and fought against permitless carry, which I will not understand why it's such a burden to fill out a form and get a background check and a criminal background check, because that does exactly what we're hoping to do, is identify folks who shouldn't have guns. And I remember we had statistics from 2020 during COVID. The probate judges used to approve the permits, and I want to say there were 5,500 applications, and 5,500 denied, and that was because of mental health or criminal background checks. So that's 5,500 people. Do I know for sure that we stopped one of them from shooting someone's loved ones? No, I can't prove that, definitely. But 5,500 in a year that probably had less applications, that's a lot of people that we kept guns out of hands that they shouldn't have been in. And the response we got back from critics and people who supported it were, well, as a legal, gun owner, I shouldn't have to fill out a form and pay a $75 fee. I don't know. To me, a form and a $75 fee is worth saving lives based on all the statistics you're hearing today. So that was heart-wrenching for me in 2021 when that passed, my first year. This last term and this term, I have filed what I think most people know as the red flag bill. A lot of people say it violates due process. It actually doesn't. It allows for a family member or a law enforcement officer to go to a judge and say, I believe my loved one, or I've read something online, or we have evidence that this person may be unstable. And they issue a temporary permit. I'm a lawyer, so I can tell you this. And then there's a evidentiary hearing within 10 days. So they take the guns temporarily, and then they have a hearing, and that person can show up and they can defend themselves. And if they prove that they should be entitled to have their guns, everything's fine. So it doesn't violate due process. And there was a bill similar to that passed in Florida after the Parkland shooting. And there is a very conservative sheriff down there who is still defending it in Broward County, saying that he believes the law is working and that they are preventing tragedy instead of responding to tragedy. And so that is one I think there's no reason why we shouldn't be passing. Also, I filed a bill that precludes folks who've been convicted or under a TPO, under the Family Violence Act, for domestic violence from having a gun. And I think you all have seen the statistics on, we're talking about women, children, and law enforcement officers who bear the brunt of those abusers being able to purchase or possess guns. So those are the bills that I've sponsored this year. I'm also a big supporter of the bill that I think a lot of folks and Georgia Majority has been really pushing, which is the Pediatric Safe Storage Bill. My colleague, Representative Dr. Michelle Au, is the leader of that. We do have a Republican co-sponsor, Representative Sharon Cooper. We remain hopeful because we do have a Republican co-sponsor on the bill. I remain hopeful that I just don't know when Appalachia I thought would really, Appalachia High School shooting not far from here. I really thought that was going to be the thing that turned the tide here in Georgia. And those family members of the survivors came down last session. And they went and they sat with the legislators for that district. And instead, they tried to pass a bill that expanded gun laws. It didn't get across the finish line, so it's really disappointing. But that's part of what this process is, going into areas maybe where they don't, communities don't see those of us. I don't care what party you are. The bullets don't discriminate between Democrat or Republican. So I'm a pro-common sense gun advocate. Take D away from my name. But we need to be going into these rural communities and other areas where people don't see anyone talking about this tragedy and the impacts, and listening to survivors and listening to the care providers who are stitching up, or hopefully stitching up, these kids. I mean, the stories I've heard from Grady about the children coming in, it is gruesome. It keeps me up at night. So we need folks holding legislators accountable and prioritizing this issue if we want to make it change. And if they won't do what's right, they need to go, whatever their letter is, by their name. So my hope is that by continuing to get out and talk more about these issues in areas that we haven't been talking, that maybe we can get some folks to start doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Roberts. Georgia Majority is also, sometimes it feels like it's a little bit of a bleak picture, but one of the things that we are trying to do is find areas of agreement, and we feel like safe storage education, funding for safe storage education through state-sponsored is an area that's really hard to disagree with. And so that's something that we are advocating for, and have, I remain hopeful that Georgia will, about half of the states have a child access prevention law on their books. And I am hopeful that Georgia will one day join the ranks. But I'm more hopeful that we will first get some funding for the state to encourage our citizens to lock up their guns around their children. So that's something that we would love your help in advocating for, and that we are pushing for in this legislative cycle. So my next question is for Dr. Rajan. Can you just share some current facts about the rates of gun violence in Georgia, and maybe some comparison to other states as well?
Well, if you were looking for some good news, it's not in Georgia, unfortunately. A good number of people in Georgia Clinicians for Gun Safety, the healthcare organization that I'm a part of, are actually out doing the research to find out exactly who is being impacted when it comes to firearm injuries and fatalities. And so I am going to refer to my cheat sheets as well. So just to paint the picture, as we already have stated, firearms are the #1 cause of death in children in the United States, ages 1 to 17. And I think just broadly, the numbers themselves, especially when we're talking about injuries and fatalities, don't paint the whole picture. I think, as Dr. Murphy was saying, not only the roots of gun violence are complex, but the ripple effects are even greater. Things that are, funding is actively being taken away also for us to be able to study, what are the mental health impacts, what are, some of the positive impacts of, for example, community violence intervention programs. Those are the other things that I think are so important for people to know, that, that there is also a role that funding and research and all those things can play in helping us to mobilize more people around this issue. So in Georgia, in 2023, Georgia had a little bit over 2,000 firearm deaths, and that's an increase from previous years. For example, the overall gun death rate in Georgia rose about 36% from 2014 to 2023. And out of those deaths, a little bit over half were due to suicides, and a little less than half were due to homicides. And the majority, the cause was known. I think something also to be said is that actually it is in rural counties in Georgia where there are the highest rate of firearm deaths. Like there are in a few rural counties, and the impact of suicide in specifically, especially in those communities, cannot be understated. And unfortunately, even suicide rates have increased across multiple demographics within the past 5 to 10 years. In Georgia, there also were, in 2023, there were 129 children and teens who died by firearm deaths. And as Heather already mentioned, Georgia and Texas are currently leading in the U.S. for a number of unintentional shootings by children this year, leading to firearm injuries and death. And in 2022, there were also at least 203 domestic violence-related homicides in Georgia, and 70% of those were due to a firearm. And then I think, as Dr. Murphy was also alluding to, it is, so for every one child that dies by a firearm, there are at least 4 that survive. And if we're talking about the physical impacts of that, whether it's a child who needs a feeding tube, a child who needs wound care for months, a child who's in the hospital for months recovering, the family, the impact on the family, whether you're talking about, the family, they're having housing instability, disability due to firearm injury. Children who survive firearm injuries are at higher risk for PTSD, of course, depression, substance abuse. And so then that also, again, it's a cycle that is being perpetuated. So I also just want to say that some of the, I think, again, a lot of people out there like to paint, the picture of, it's one group that's being affected or another group that's being affected. Black Georgians, especially young Black males, do have a disproportionately higher rate of homicide deaths, and the roots of that are also complex, and I know that a lot of that is due to disinvestment in these communities. And so that also is a big reason why I think we all need to care about, how families are getting health care. That has an impact. How are people getting food assistance? How are people getting just a housing assistance? So I will stop there. I know I kind of have just gone through a lot. But it's just all to say that even though these facts are very grim, like Representative Roberts was saying, there are things that we can do. And I honestly, through this work in such a short period of time, have learned so much. And so I think it's great that you guys are all here as well, so that we can all, continue learning from each other.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan. Representative Roberts mentioned Everytown for Gun Safety has a really great visual tool on their website where they rank the states according to the strength of their gun laws. And then right next to it, it shows the rates of gun violence. And it's such a powerful visual tool because you can see how tightly correlated those things are. And I like to say, even if we just passed our, 4 foundational gun safety laws that we're advocating for. I think that the social science indicates that, we could cut our rate of gun violence in half. And that's 1,000 lives. That's a lot of people and a lot of residual people impacted. So it's a great tool for you guys to take a look at, and I encourage you to do that. So now we're going to turn to a topic that we've mentioned a couple times, but I would love for our practitioners to share with us about community violence intervention. It is a large field, but the way I like to describe it is these are really the boots on the ground, people who are either helping survivors of gun violence or working in communities to interrupt cycles of violence at a very granular level, and I like to call them the heroes. It's such important work, but we have two community violence intervention specialists here, and so my question for you guys is, can you just talk about what CVI is and how it has been meaningful, either for you in your own journey or how you see community violence intervention helping the community, and some stories from your work. So Monica, okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm new to CVI intervention. I'm a part of the ecosystem at Emory Hillendale, and I have learned a lot in this last couple of years, and it started with Moms Demand Action, and so it grew from there to become a part of this ecosystem. What is very interesting is how small grassroots organizations send people into communities to not only advocate, but they go in and find out what the needs are. There's organizations that go in when there is gun violence. They may show up at the hospital and immediately jump into action, talking to families, finding out what they need. If they lose the loved one, then they're talking to them about, okay, funeral services. Some organizations offer funds to help assist take care of those costs. We do wraparound services, counseling, get them connected to referral services. Sometimes children are left without a parent, and they may need housing assistance, or we got to find some way for them to eat. They take care of all of that. There's another program who has come to realize that education is a key point when we see violence in our neighborhoods. So they have an alternative school. Now, it's not alternative in that they're too bad to go to the regular school. They need another option. So I guess we should change the terminology and not call it an alternative school, but they go there. If they come out of prison, they can come there, get their GED, and get some services so that they can come back into the community and make a difference. This is heartwarming work. It's very needed. I am in talks with Emory and trying to figure out how I can get in here and start talking to survivors of domestic abuse, because domestic gun violence happens every day. We just heard, we had a deputy just the other week, right? So it's needed, and right now no one's doing that. So CVI is very, very important to our communities. And whether someone shows up with a gun in a school or not, or even in a sanctuary, the violence and the effects of it is still here. You may not see it, but it's still here.
So that was a perfect way to describe CVI, and I'll just add that community violence intervention is a part of the larger public safety ecosystem. So it's not a replacement for law enforcement, but it's a complementary service and approach. And some of the key differences, or I'll say some of the strengths of community violence intervention, is that there's a network of people who don't wear uniforms. They just look like, regular people from communities and neighborhoods where they have access to individuals who are at the highest risk for experiencing a firearm injury. So that could be homicide-related, domestic violence, or even those who are contemplating suicide. These are individuals who have those deep relationships, and oftentimes they are the ones, and I'll refer to them as frontline professionals, but they're the ones that get the phone calls 3 a.m. or, before a conflict happens that will escalate to violence. They are the individuals who can actually interrupt violence before it even happens. I can't tell you the number of frontline professionals that I've worked with who will call me and say, they call me Jay. So, hey, Jay, I have this young kid. They're at high risk for experiencing a firearm injury. There's conflict going on, or whatever the situation is, and we're able to quickly get them into therapeutic services to mediate conflict and also to prevent a firearm injury from occurring. So they kind of work oftentimes in the background. You may not hear about them, you may not see them, but they are constantly working to interrupt gun violence. And they play so many different roles. The role I play is in our organization, we are considered a hospital-linked, community-based organization where, I take referrals directly from Grady Hospital, again, for young survivors. Once I receive them and provide them care, I can also link them to other community violence intervention professionals to provide very specific services if it's domestic violence related, if they need a primary care provider, if they need legal support. So it's a very comprehensive public safety ecosystem.
And this actually is a time where I get to say there is a little bit of good news. There is a House bill that has Republican sponsors. There might be a Democratic co-sponsor, but I think it's, in Georgia, our legislature is, it has a majority of Republicans. So when it's a Republican sponsor, that is good news for its passage. That would provide a certification process for community health workers, and that would allow for some professionalization, standards for community health workers, and it would also open up federal funding. I know that seems like a little bit of a joke right now, but we will not always be in this current moment. But that would allow for funding to come through to some of these CVI organizations. And I also want to mention that something that Georgia Majority has been advocating for is an Office of Violence Prevention at the state level, and we have several states that have offices of violence prevention, and one of the main things that does is allow for some protocols in some of the situations that you were mentioning, Monica, but also funding. So those are some ways that we are advocating to just expand Georgia's CVI ecosystem, and thank you guys so much for the work that you're doing. Okay, so my last question, and then we can take some audience questions, is just for all of you, can you provide some thoughts about what everyday Georgians can do to help combat the epidemic of gun violence in Georgia?
Well, I would say get to know your state representatives, because all that power right now sits with us. The states have control over common sense gun laws. And so you need to reach out, call, set up an appointment, have coffee with them. That's the great thing about your state rep or your state senator, is they live in your communities. Their districts are not so huge. Like the congressional districts are a little tougher. And so set up coffee with them and let them know that this is an issue that is important to you, and that you have a specific one of these laws that is significant to you or resonates with you, and tell them that you want to see something like that passed, and what can you do to encourage them and their colleagues to pass it? More need to hear from more of us. I don't need to hear from you. I'm already there. But the folks that aren't that are getting in the way of this too, like they won't even give our bills a hearing. That's what's really frustrating. We got one hearing on one of the pediatric safe storage bills. They set up a subcommittee that they created it called the 2A subcommittee. And it was not for a vote, it was just for testimony. They did listen to the testimony, so that was a victory. But it's frustrating banging our head against this wall, so we need more people from the community reaching out.
Is there an organized lobby or faction against these laws, or is it just no support? I mean, is it apathy?
Georgia Gun Owners, NRA, there's one other one.
Organized in Georgia against these?
Yes.
Take them up.
Yes, I stay on their email list just to see what they say, and it's terrifying. It really is, I mean, it's terrifying.
Yeah, what I often say about this issue is that there is a small minority that is loud, devoted, and really causes a big ruckus. And unfortunately, that loud minority really holds more sway over the party in power than the majority of people who, like I said at the beginning, polling says most people, most gun owners, most Republicans, most Democrats, most non-gun owners all agree on these issues. And just to echo Representative Roberts, even if your representative and senator are friendly on this issue, they still need to hear from you that this is something that you care about. That we are a relatively silent majority, and we need to exercise our power over this issue and take away the power of this very loud minority.
There is no benefit to the people, in my opinion.
How do we dissuade them?
It's money, one. Money is a big one. Sorry, I'm just going to be direct. Yeah. It's a lobbying group, and manufacturers, they're all part of that. And they utilize the Second Amendment as kind of the religion, for lack of a better word, for defending all of this stuff. But that is my problem here in Georgia. This country was set up as a representative democracy. And you can watch the polls in the newspapers, whether it's protecting the Okefenokee Swamp, that had bipartisan support, to common sense guns, to health care, to all of these things that we see 60 to 80% of Georgians want. But our representatives are not representing the majority of the people, and that's a problem. And I wish until we start getting people to focus less on the party identity and on the actual topics and hold those representatives accountable, I don't know how we're gonna get past it. So that's why we're out in areas where maybe we can talk to some folks that may not agree with us on everything, but this we all agree on, right? So.
And I do think that there's a cultural aspect so the Georgia gun owners in particular, they, and the lobby has been very successful. I think that there's several things that are kind of coming together, but they really and truly believe that, about freedom, and that, the government should not be, interfering, and they have convinced, I think, more rational people that somebody like Representative Roberts, who is a gun owner herself, is a gun grabber and just wants to take away your rights. They have convinced, people who maybe are not thinking about it more in depth. Because you will, and it's been a very successful marketing campaign, and I do believe that the money is kind of behind that. But just a regular old person, I went and spoke with a group of women and their sons, are hunters, and they said, "Oh, is she trying to take away our guns?" And that's not the effort, but it is definitely, so there is a cultural aspect, and I think that's part of where the education is really important.
Education is important because did you know that to get a hunting license, you have to take a safety course, but to go buy a handgun, you do not. Tell me how that makes sense.
Can I let the other three panelists just share their final thoughts, and then we can continue with questions? Thank you.
Summing it up is difficult, but I would say that I think one area of tangible action is signing up to be a part of Georgia Majority for Gun Safety. If you're in healthcare, being part of Georgia Clinicians for Gun Safety, we work obviously completely together. But I think just, again, as somebody who a year ago was not very informed about this, and I still would not consider myself an expert, but that getting emails, seeing, okay, I can just send a quick email to a senator. I can write a quick postcard, reading a one-pager about what's going on, I think gives you a sense of power. And I think it, again, obviously the church has been a fundamental historical part of community organizing. Faith is one of the most powerful tools that we have to heal and to bring people together. So I think that in a similar way, this, channeling that energy towards action by just being able to be quickly informed, I think is very helpful. And I think just having a conversation and trying to find common ground, I think society as a whole is just so polarized, and that talking to kids today, you just see that they're almost in a numb state. They really, it's almost like their reality is just so skewed by headlines, and we're not, and politicians as well, not you, but just seeing that, that these are real people, these are real children, these are real women. There are just so many people whose real stories need to be uplifted, and I think having human connection and having conversations with people is a really powerful tool as well. And asking, one of the other things as a primary care pediatrician I strongly emphasize is ask about safe storage. If you're sending your child to someone's house, if you are sending them in a car with somebody, ask, is your firearm safely stored? I have that conversation every day. I say, is your firearm safely stored? Is it locked up? And that, how is it locked up? Because people will be like, yeah, it's locked up in the closet where, again, or it's in my purse. So I think having the conversation in a non-judgmental way where you're just, again, trying to find common ground and safety is important.
I think education is key. So I am asking you to invite some organizations into your social clubs, your churches, your business. Allow us to come in and do maybe a short workshop, a seminar. Moms Demand Action can come in and do a Be Smart table and group and talk about how to securely lock away your gun. Anybody that's a part of the CVI ecosystem can come in and talk about any range of violence and safe ways. Have some brochures, some information, just maybe in the restroom, on the counter, at the PTA meeting. Education is key. A lot of people I hear and see on social media, they're saying things, but they don't completely understand what they're talking about. And so until we can really listen and understand what the problem is and how big this is, then and only then can we start to resolve the issue. Thank you.
I was going to say education as well, but I'll add donating, right? The reason why groups such as the NRA are so powerful is because they have a strong member base that is willing to put funds behind what they believe in. And, each of our organizations and even campaigns, right, they all need funding to work and to do the good work that they're doing in the community. So donating and also just leveraging connections. Like the reason why community violence intervention organizations are able to sit on these panels and to have a louder voice is through our networks. Because again, oftentimes this is unseen work. Most of my work happens one-on-one with families who have already been impacted. But relationships and networks and donations really help to fuel this work. And it really makes all of our communities safer because we can all be impacted by firearm injuries and gun violence.
So that's it, and I know you guys had some questions, and I don't know, Pastor Avery, if I am happy to share. Dr. Murphy's organization is Girasol Wellness. Monica, your organization is Daylight Inc. Preeti it represents Georgia Clinicians for Gun Safety. Representative Roberts is running again for state, every 2 years, and I represent Georgia Majority for Gun Safety. So thank you for that. And I know some people had hands up.
Donate. Is there an advertisement? Is there an ad campaign to actually talk about gun violence and advocate against it on a public level? If we do donate, is there a way that we can actually donate specifically for anti-gun resistant violence?
So yes, Georgia Majority for Gun Safety. That is in 2024. One of the things that we did is we had a candidate pledge campaign for all of the state level candidates, and in close districts, we did billboards and yard signs when there was a candidate who signed our pledge, which again is just for our four legislative priorities, saying that you'll support that when you get to the legislature. And so yes, we ran billboards and put out yard signs, and then we also have, and we just did a fall fundraising campaign where we are trying to raise more money to be able to do billboards and targeted marketing. Actually, one of the things I have spoken with somebody who does, the internet ads where it's targeted to audiences. So it's just a matter of getting the funding to do that. So yeah, 100%. And I'll let you guys go.
The other thing I would say is on candidates, see who's taking the pledge. See if they're districts that are close as far as the vote. And if you need help finding that out, I'm happy to give you my number. And donate to the candidate who has taken the pledge. Because at the end of the day, we need more pro-common sense gun safety legislators, no matter what letter is by their name. So.
I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm short. My comment or question is two-part. I don't know that much about the NRA, except it's, as far as I know, a national organization and obviously very powerful. Besides, I read, some things where it wasn't so savory as far as people taking advantage and whatever. The first thing I have is, if you're going to, everybody knows money and power talk. So even the best of intentions of people, they either get overridden in politics by people stronger than them saying, if you do not do as I think you should, there goes your career. And a lot of them choose that over integrity to do the right thing. So with that, number one, is there one organization, and I'm thinking different levels, within each maybe state, and you could go national if you start connecting to other states. For instance, you be the head of it, Georgia. Underneath it, you have all these other sub things. So number one, you donate, and it flows to different groups within it, so everybody doesn't have to know every group for donating. Number two, for power. The more people you get, it snowballs. So then you start getting bigger and bigger, not just within Georgia, but you start getting advocates in all the other states, and you come up with a national organization, I'm thinking big picture here, that can counter the NRA. Because if there are that many people, which I believe you, I think so too, because we all know 6 degrees of separation. The son-in-law of someone that goes to my church was one of those teachers that got killed over there, and I live over here. Okay, my sister-in-law is a middle high school band director down in Florida. She knows the band director for that school. Okay, I've got 3 of them in the school system down there. They're at risk just like those kids. I know they'd throw their, cells right on top of those kids to protect them. The point is, you've got to fight power with power. So fight good against evil, if you want to look at it that way. I have no issues with guns either, except we know what they do in the wrong hands. I'll take it one step further. I know the 2006 law that our national government let expire, and you saw the numbers go like this, where you couldn't have, I don't remember all of it, bump stocks, assault weapons. As far as I'm concerned, you want to shoot one of those, go join the military. My humble opinion. But anyway, with rights come responsibilities. I'm mumbling now and whatever. If you live in a society, there are rules. It's not all about you. It's about all of us. And unfortunately, there's a lot of selfish thinkers out there. Well, you're taking my rights away. Well, what about their right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, you can do it in Georgia and funnel it to all these folks. That's number one, and maybe go national. Secondly, we need to find out who our state reps are and try to get something going and get somebody to help us, and then corner them and say, okay, you come talk, and we advertise it everywhere. And okay, you come in front of us and tell you what you're doing about it, and we have someone with the education.
I think I need to recruit you. Yeah, what's your name? We have a volunteer sign up right back there.
Sharon Sullivan. I'm just thinking outside the box, that's all. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Who are your state representatives? Do you know? It's okay. A lot of
No,
people know.
Michelle. I don't know the person that's in the position. I've been to a meeting on someone that's running for it. I've met you.
Michelle King. Michelle King.
Hey, there you are, Michelle.
So
Michelle's running against that person.
Matt Reeves
Matt
is the
Reeves.
incumbent. Matt Reeves is the incumbent.
We're 99. I knew
99.
we were something like that, and I don't know because I haven't really focused that much on state level. I was focusing more on national, but we got to
because
do
the Supreme
state
Court
and
now
national.
has pushed it all
Oh no,
down.
my prayers go all the way down because we got a big mess.
No, but the Supreme Court has said the states control gun laws. So federal is not going to help us, and definitely not under this current administration. So the effort should, at this point in time, I'm not going to say I'm always going to tell you that or every issue, but in this point in time, all dollars, all efforts on the state level, get Michelle King elected. That's one.
Woo woo. Right.
Let me tell you about the power structure in Georgia, and I know I'm not allowed to be partisan, but this is just the reality. we have one party that is controlling the governor's office and both chambers. That means they don't even have to listen to the other side, whether you're pro-gun or not. And so since I came in 21, I've made it my mission for my party to take one chamber. I think a divided government, we have to talk to each other. And they can't get something passed unless we can get something passed. And so that has been my mission and what I work towards. My seat is safer now, so I help folks. I started a PAC last summer and helped folks like Michelle try and win, and she's going to get it this time. It took me twice to win. It's hard to flip a seat, but candidates like Michelle who step in and are willing to do the hard work, lose, and then get back in and do it again. I mean, it is not easy. So help Michelle if you live in her district. That is the best thing that you can do, because we need 11 seats in the State House. And this will be the year, I believe, that we'll have the best chance, just because of what's going on nationally and in the world right now. And so even if you are not party affiliated, it makes sense that in Georgia right now, when we have what I said, which is not a representative democracy, getting a divided government will get us talking again.
And the one thing, and I agree. The one thing that I would say about, because you are right, this movement has been very splintered, and that was part of the reason 2 years ago that we formed Georgia Majority for Gun Safety, was to bring all of the voices in Georgia that are advocating on gun safety issues to have, one message. And the fact is there's not that many pressure points, and so we all need to be singing from the same song sheet, and that was kind of the goal of Georgia Majority. And there are fantastic national organizations out there, but Georgia Majority is the only organization that in Georgia that is solely focused on advocacy at the state level, except for Georgia Clinicians, which we're sort of like hand in hand. Mike, did you have a question?
I did. I'm hearing so many comments, and I want to make sure that something else gets thrown into this. So Mike Greenwald, Georgia Clinicians for Gun Safety, and Georgia Majority, and yes, and your comments are spot on. Absolutely, that's what we're trying to work on. But I want to just get back to this. I don't want people to leave any of these sessions with a feeling of despair. Not that I would blame you. We all have plenty of reasons to feel a little despair. However, there is great evidence that you have a lot of power. A lot of power. And I'll give you just two examples of this, okay? So when we go to the Capitol, and we go on a daily basis during the session to say hello to every legislator when they come to work, and we ask them, what are you doing about gun violence today? And we know that there are certain ones that are just our buddies and they give us a hug and that feels good, but they're not really the people we need to talk to. And we know some that keep on walking and they don't want to talk to us, and that's okay too. It's the ones in the middle. The ones in the middle will talk to us, and they will talk to us behind closed doors in their office. And this is what they say. We'll talk, we'll argue a little bit, and then the conclusion will be, I agree with you. You're right. But I can't vote that way because I've got some constituents that really make me nervous. What does that tell you? They need to be more nervous about you than them. And if you are calling your representative, and I hope you know who that is here in this area, and give them a call and say, I want to talk to you about something. And it can't be just one person. It's got to be another person and another person and another person telling them, this is my top issue. What are you doing as my representative to fight for me? That will stick in the back of their head, and they'll wonder about that. One other thing, now, yes, for sure, there are opponents, political opponents, that have some money, and they use some scare tactics, but they don't win all the battles. At the end of not the last session, but the previous session, at the last minute, there was an effort to put into the budget, just to sneak it in, a big amount of money so that we could pay teachers to be the security guards of schools. They knew that it couldn't pass politically, but they thought maybe we can just sneak it in the budget. We learned about it, and we activated our network, which meant that there were literally thousands of phone calls and emails going on drowning these. And I was knocking on doors with my wife on that day, and every door they said, we know, we're not going to let it happen. Don't worry. You have power, you have a voice, but that's why we're going to all of these communities with your community and the next community over, and everyone's speaking out and saying, no, you got to fix this problem. This is your responsibility. What are you doing to fix it? It will get fixed.
Thank
And
you.
our admins do answer phone calls, and they do keep a tally when we're looking at a bill of how many people called for or against that bill, just so you know. So if you don't think those phone calls matter, they do.
You just say, it's me again.
I wanna
And you
go
can
back
call
to
every
your
day, and they'll keep tallying it.
Every Town for Gun Safety is a national organization. I am the Gwinnett lead for Moms Demand Action, which is a branch from Every Town. And we do advocacy every single day. There is a chapter in almost every state and in a lot of different counties as well. We do Advocacy Day, we do Be Smart, we do health fairs, whatever we can do, we do it to educate. We just released a gun safety training for people. So since we're fighting for gun safety, we developed a training to teach people how to safely use and lock away their guns. So Every Town for Gun Safety and Moms Demand Action.
And Every Town does fund a lobbyist at the Capitol that represents all of these interests as well. So they're a great organization. I started with Moms Demand as well. Gabby Giffords has been involved recently as well. Not as much as Moms and Every Town. And then there are lots of different, but the great thing that Georgia Majority did was kind of, there's also Regulate Guns Not Women, a group that started, I think, as Grandmothers for Peace. They're awesome. They kind of brought all of these groups and all of these leaders under one umbrella for Georgia specifically, so that we could.
Yes. Yeah. And yes. And one of the things that I was going to say is that time back to when we activated, so this was Georgia Majority activating the network to, because it really was the last day of the session. They really were trying to sneak in these $10,000 bonuses. The Georgia Moms Demand Action chapter is a part of our network because we are solely focused on Georgia. And so when we activated that network, we were able to get all of those Moms Demand Action volunteers, which is the national organization. And they, you host a march and they'll get lots and lots of people out. It's a very large organization, but the focus, the laser focus for Georgia, that's what Georgia Majority brings to the table. Just to clarify, because I get that question a lot. Are you with Moms Demand? And yes, the Georgia Moms Demand Action chapter is a part of our coalition. So, and you've been waiting, so I'm going to let you ask your question.
Thank you. I'd like to say our representatives are Clint Dixon and Sandy Donatucci, and Farouk Magal is going to run against her again. He only lost by 80 votes, so there's thoughts and prayers. Two questions, well, three actually, but one is for a legislative alert. Would you have that on the Georgia Majority website? That would be good to know. And for Representative Roberts, do you find it to be a division between metro and rural Georgia? I know Governor Kemp campaigned only in the rural counties during one of his runs for the governor, so I didn't know if that influenced the way that the politicians vote.
Well, we haven't really tried to think of what the vote was on permitless carry. Did any Republicans vote against it? I honestly don't remember.
I think
Okay.
Scott Hilton and maybe Deborah Silcox abstained.
Maybe two abstained, but I do not believe many.
It's not a
They
divide.
vote at a block.
Okay.
95% of, maybe 99% of the time, they vote in a block.
Okay.
And if they don't, it's school vouchers was one where a lot of the rural school districts, they depend on their public schools, and so that was one you could see division. Very rarely do you see that. And if it's an issue that they know, maybe some of the seats that are close, like Farouk's or Michelle's, they might let that legislator take a walk, abstain, maybe even vote no if they know they already have the votes locked up. It's very strategic and very coordinated.
So the last question is for the women who spoke about community violence initiative. You, at the level at which you become active, it's sort of after the fact. The violence has occurred, and you must provide the services, the social and psychological services required to help those people. What do you see as the larger societal shift that needs to happen? What's the sea change for people who aren't functioning at that level, whose point of view needs to change so they don't get there? I vaguely remember years ago at church, we did everybody took a pledge not to watch violent movies for the month of January or whatever it was. That was just a tiny little step on that. So what do you see what is the move, what is the change that you need to see in the larger society, and how do you have any recommendations for getting there?
Awareness and prevention. We have to focus on making people aware of what the effects are of gun violence, domestic violence, drugs, all those things, and then show them how to prevent it. We have to be realistic in what we do, because the truth of the matter is oftentimes people grow up in homes where violence is the norm. So now we have extra work to do, because they're not aware that what they grew up in is not the norm, and it should not be that way. So, yeah. So awareness and prevention is what I would say.
And I'll add just a little point of clarification that CVI organizations, they often are helping to interrupt gun violence before it ever happens. So, for example, in my hometown of Durham, North Carolina, there was one CVI organization. Their funding was cut from the city, and gun violence has gone up over 150%, right? So, because these individuals had the relationships with those who were at highest risk. So there's lots of evidence to support that community violence intervention efforts work before violence happens. We do also provide support after an event has occurred, so providing therapy, but it's incredibly difficult once someone has experienced a firearm injury to prevent all of the things that happen after that, because you're talking about families that are now living in fear. Families who may not been firearm owners before now decide to purchase firearms. Even just your response to perceived threats is completely different after you've been injured. So it's incredibly difficult. What I will say is what has been helpful is that I'm able to sort of tell the raw truth of what these young people's experiences are. And I'll share that and also add some hope, because I like what Mike mentioned, that we do need hope. But when I see clients, and again, 26 and younger for therapy, one of the questions that I ask them is, how many times were you shot? Because more often than not, they are shot 3, 5, 10, sometimes more. It's actually less likely that the clients that I see are only shot one time. And you wouldn't believe the number of young people who will tell me, I was shot in my chest, my arm, and I was, my kidney was injured as well. And it's absolutely unreal. So telling the raw truth of what their experiences are, but then also knowing that there are so many young people who I've seen after a firearm injury that they're able to find some sense of hope just by knowing that someone cares, that someone's listening to their story, that they have someone to talk with week by week to say, I am afraid, I'm having nightmares, I don't want to go to school, I don't have any more hopes and dreams, can you help? Because our young people don't feel that adults are helping, because essentially we're not, right? We're a whole country of adults that are not acting on this big issue, and it's disturbing, and their voices are not being heard. So, I appreciate everyone here who even just shows up to listen, right? I hate having to tell those stories. It's horrible. But I appreciate everyone who shows up and then asking those questions, so.
I have a question. I'm not a gun owner. I don't intend to have a gun. But my family is a victim of death by a gun. So here's my question. I'm going to pose it this way. When I turned 65, and I went to renew my driver's license. There was a questionnaire I had to fill out, and they examined my eyes again. I had to put my face through the camera and watch the balls and everything. So here's my question. Today, a gun owner does a background check, and he's qualified to own a gun.
There's no background checks in Georgia.
Well, that's where I'm going, so I'm not sure, but here's the point that I'm making. If a gun owner has a gun and he qualifies to have this gun, 6 years from now, he may have a nervous mental breakdown. So how do we safeguard tomorrow based on what the person that owns the gun did today? And the reason why I said this is because the gentleman in Michigan, Gaylord in Michigan, a couple of weeks ago, he was registered to have a gun. He was a veteran. And he woke up that day and decided to wreak havoc on that society, that church. So do we have any laws or checks and balances in place for the tomorrow gun owner who suddenly wakes up one morning and he's in another deranged world?
So this is not hopeful, but the reality is there is no required permit or background check in Georgia, period. So there isn't even preventing now because there are no checks.
So that person that has a gun today,
I can go buy a gun.
he's out there, and the tomorrows of the future, we have no safeguards because
There's no safeguards in Georgia.
you
period.
hear parents and you hear relatives say, I tried to warn society that my son or my daughter, whoever, has went off the rail a little bit,
So
but nothing is done.
the law that I've proposed, that I filed, is the red flag bill, and that would prevent that. If you knew somebody was unstable, you could go to a court and you could ask a judge, but we've got to pass it. Some states have passed it, and it has definitely helped. That was the story I told about after the Parkland shooting. Florida actually passed it, and Governor DeSantis has been trying to undo it. But a Broward County sheriff, who says he's a conservative law and order guy, said, don't do it. It's been helping us prevent tragedy. So I think a red flag bill would address what you're talking about. But I would like permits and background checks, but also, these are not, I mean, you have to you went and went through all that to get a driver's license, and people kill people in vehicles all the time. You have to take a safety.
It's a no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer. Should be.
I have a question for our representative. Are you aware of a bill 469 in the Senate that passed this March? I only bring it up, and I want to keep hopeful, and I want to say unkind things about other people. But just to understand how deranged our Senate is, they actually passed a bill that would make it illegal for individual cities to pass.
Oh, yes, I fought again. I gave a speech.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just they're absolutely deranged. This guy Colton, I think is his name. I was just Colton Moore appears to be some sort of evolutionary missing link. I mean, he's just god awful, and that's what we're up against. Oh, anyway, I wanted to know if you knew about 469.
I'm
you might want to
horrible
tell
with the numbers, but now that you said, so it was in response to Savannah. The Savannah mayor had passed a bill that basically said you had to lock your car. Is that right?
It's vehicular safety.
Vehicular safety. And so some of the more extreme Republicans like Colton Moore decided that that was inexcusable, that he tried to keep people in Savannah safe, because that's one of the number one things is stealing handguns out of cars. Your law enforcement, if you ask them, they will tell you that that is the number one problem. And so they were indignant that a city mayor decided to try and preempt state law, which says, according to them, we can't impose any laws on guns. So.
And there already is a preemption statute. It's just that the Senate Bill 469 was trying to do was to increase the penalty on the preemption. So like the city of Savannah already got punished, but let's say it was like $50,000 and they wanted to make it like, $250,000 or something to that effect. That was, and it was something that we definitely were advocating against. And I remember that you had this question about our action alerts. So we send out a monthly action alert when we're not in session, and we put it up on our website. And then during the session, we actually have a weekly action alert, and we try and update that on our website. None of it is like super pretty because this is all like really bootstrap grassroots work. So our website is not flashy, but the information is there. So yes, please join our newsletter, and you'll get all those alerts.
I would like to make a comment. I'm rather older. I grew up in the 50s and 60s in New York City, and I joined the military in the early 70s.
Thank you for your service.
I joined because it was safer in Vietnam than it was in Bed-Stuy, New York City.
Yeah.
Okay? And I would tell you that when I retired from the military in '92, that the streets were safer. Okay, so the one comment I make to you is don't give up, because it's going to transition. It's going to take a while, and it does take a while, but it takes some of the actions that you're taking now. But I'll also say that as a mentor and a person that talks to a lot of young people, we have to change our focus. You look at the video games, the Call of Duty, and some of the things that these young kids are able to get. And then one kid comes to me and says, I want to go into the Marines and be a sniper. And he forgets that in Call of Duty, you can get a do-over. You don't get a do-over in life. And this is what young people are going through when they see people are shooting at each other because they don't know any better. And because we are now homes with two parents that have to work and the video games becomes the babysitter, we now have to do more about what we're teaching them or what we're allowing them to have during those days. Because when I told the kid, I said, you do know that if you miss, that they're coming after you. Oh, he goes, oh, I didn't know that. And I said, you know they're coming after you because you're going to be by yourself. Oh, then again, I didn't know that either. So a lot of the education that we get, there's a lot of things that have to be limited based on the amount of money that you're spending. And it says, oh, you have to be 16, you need to be 18 years old to make a decision like that, because when a kid is up all night long playing video games and so I could start again, this is what goes into his mind and this is what he thinks.
Yeah.
I just want to make a quick comment on that as well. Like as you mentioned, I think like youth being the focus, not just in the setting of the impact of school shootings, but like again so many kids, like I can't tell you the number of mental health visits that I have every single day, and that mental health has been like stigmatized and politicized as like to shift away the focus from the lethal means to kill someone or kill yourself, but that what I'm seeing every day from like such a young age is just a sense of despair and inability to resolve conflict, like Dr. Murphy was saying as well, like that, just like that there's just a sense of like my emotion to action, it's very quick. And again, not feeling heard. So I think again, the organizations like Dr. Murphy's, other organizations, like there's one called Jared's Heart of Success. Like I am like, the more that we're all the church is, again, that is like the youth groups, like mentorship. I think that is also so important. And that is the work, like exactly like you're talking about, having a one-on-one conversation in 2 minutes, you could make a huge impact on a child. And that's, again, like, I mean, that's why I love what I do, because I think kids are just really, like, truly the future.
And I also just want to say that, there are so many factors that go into the gun violence epidemic, and we have, up on the stage, you have, representatives of people who are working at various, angles towards reducing the problem. And, the United States really stands alone among developed countries in terms of our rates of gun violence. And that is not because we have, cornered the market on video game playing or mental health, afflictions. It is because of the access, the unfettered access to firearms, combined with all of the, the social determinants that, people up here are working to address. But it is the access to firearms combined with all of those determinants. And we have, in this country, there are states that have passed laws that just regulate the access. And that's really the point, is that we can do that in the United States. We can do it in Georgia, and we can reduce the toll. And that's really the point. It is 8:30, and that is 2 hours of people taking your time, and I really appreciate that. I don't want to cut anybody off, but if there are last questions, or if our panelists want to say a final word, I want to, yeah.
I'd like to make one comment. I grew up here. I'm 83 years old. When I was in high school, I think there were like maybe 10 to 15,000 people in all of Gwinnett. Now they're over a million. And most everybody had guns. I still have some former friends on the right when we have discussions about guns. We raised the point of having what you have to do to get a driver's license. You have to do the same thing to be able to cut hair. You have to be able to do the same thing to have all those kinds of things. We're wasting our breath when we use those examples, because their comeback is really simple. None of those activities are prohibited in the Constitution. It's their misunderstanding, or what we believe is their misunderstanding of the Second Amendment. So we can't fight these people with logic or just rational discussion. It's not going to work. I would suggest that we do what and probably getting on a bad subject now, but what the anti-abortionists did 20 years ago when they brought in pictures to the legislators of fetuses. We should bring in pictures of what this does to children. When a military weapon is fired, it's not like firing a .22 rifle or even a pistol. What comes out the other side is magnified many times, and these children, particularly, even adults, but even it's horrendous. There is a reason they did not show the pictures of the children at Sandy Hook. And I think that if we went to the state legislature every day and held up these, we'd have to get the permission of the parents and everything to do it. But it's that kind of thing that we have to fight fire with fire. Thank you.
There was a mother who came to a hearing with a picture of her son. I can't remember if it was Betty, Maddox Battle. I can't remember, but she came, and but it was very powerful, because stories are really powerful. You're right. So before we close, and if anybody has a final thought, I'd love to offer you guys that. I do have sign up for the newsletter in the back. We also have a donation page. We are in the middle of our fall fundraising campaign. I also, if you would like a t-shirt, there's a little code. You can order a t-shirt. And we had an event last night, so I have some cookies and some postcards and a few little gift bags left over with some pins and a couple of candies. So please help yourself, take pictures, and Mike, go ahead. Do any of our panelists have anything?
Just thank you all for being here tonight. I know you could be doing other things on a Wednesday night, but we really appreciate seeing you all out here. Gives me hope.
Thank you, Pastor Avery.
Thank you, Georgia Minority, for gun safety. I think this has been very excellent. And again, to our Bible study students, this is our Wellness Wednesday. Again, I think one of the main things that we do at Poplar Hill is that we do Wellness Wednesday to make sure that our community is involved and we stay in touch with the current issues that affect our constituent members. So thank you all for allowing me to invade your Bible study with our Wellness Community Night for gun violence. So give our panelists a big hand, if you will. Thank you all for coming tonight. I do want to mention that Michelle King is here. She's running for state representative for 99, District 99. Woo-hoo. And also we have Nick Alex is here, who is running for the Congress seat for, which number is it? 9th District here in this area too. So it's good to have them. I'm thankful that they thought enough to come out and be a part of this event to show their concern for a issue and concerns that are germane to the survival of our children and for the good of this community. So thank you all very much. Nick, I know who invited you now, our great neighbor who walks by with her German Shepherd on an everyday basis. I asked her to invite you. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to invite you to come back any Sunday you feel the opportunity will allow you to come and be a part of Poplar Hill Baptist Church. Again, thank you all. You've been with Poplar Hill Baptist Church, a Christ-centered church where love is the greatest. God bless you. God keep you as our desire. Thank you.